So whilst we're just waiting for Tracy, let me say good afternoon to everybody and thank you all for coming. And today we're going to talk about the asset register and I'll be doing some of the live presentations today. So apologies if things go a little haywire. They say you should never ever do live presentations. And then we get to the fun bit where we invite you to play around with your cell phones. So I hope everyone has a cell phone ready. And if you have a moment to log in to parishonline.xmat.cloud, that would be good. And most of you are there already, I think, but just in case anybody isn't. And I'm going to get started in case we run out of time. And I'm hoping that Bob doesn't have a cell phone. Fret not, Bob. It will not be the end of the world. You can just chuckle at everybody else. All right, I'm going to get started and I hope Tracy can catch up. So sharing my screen, everyone ought to be able to see the screen, but they won't if I cancel it all for everybody. Good afternoon. And let's see if we can, oh dear, we're now in one of these things where it doesn't want to. There we go. So today's notes, for those of you who've been on previous courses, are slightly different because we've taken out the sentence that says we're going to be racing through at an enormous speed because today is a much more gentle pace. But we are recording a session and I will send you all the video afterwards and the presentation, and you'll also get a full copy of that. So hopefully you can relax, sit back and enjoy. And you people will need, if you want to join the interactive bit, either a telephone or a laptop or a tablet, or today you could just work with your desktop for most of the time, not for all of it, but because we aren't sending people outside to wander around the parish, people can do things from their desk. And as always, please don't hesitate to chat or call me up if you are having an issue, and we'll press on. So we're going to talk about why we have an asset register, and then talk a little bit about its infrastructure because it's different from everything else in Parish Online. We'll go through the most frequently asked question, and then I'll be doing a demonstration on the asset register itself, a hints and tips session, and then we launch into the fun of the geolocation stuff, which I've had feedback from yesterday where people say they've actually gone out and tried it because it was so much entertainment. So I look forward to hoping that you find the same sort of enjoyment as well. So I think it's time we moved out of the filing cabinet, got everything off paper and onto a digitally available system that's open 24/7 and can be seen simultaneously by multiple users and doesn't pay any attention to the fact that the parish clerk has gone off on her holidays with the key to the filing cabinet in her pocket. It's much easier to see and understand what your assets are if you can see them, and where they are placed within your parish. So it helps to have a digital mapping system underlying the asset register. Once the information is into the system, then doing everything thereafter is very much faster, and certainly getting reports out to those who need them becomes a piece of cake. And the whole idea of this, in case anyone's noticed that I've mentioned insurance once or twice, is that it's the insurance companies that really drive the need for an asset register. It helps them to know precisely what it is that they're insuring on the one side, but on the other, they're really much more able to help you defend yourself against claims. If you've got a system that has got everything recorded and you can show due diligence and good governance in that you've got inspection intervals laid down for everything, and then you've got reports that show you are indeed following the inspection intervals, ditto for maintenance. And it really helps the insurance companies when the time comes to either pay you a claim or defend you against a claim. So insurance is what is driving the real start to the asset register. So sorry about that. I'm a little bit sensitive on my mouse this afternoon. So I think I just covered most of this. That the whole point about the asset register is to give you a track record that's very easily producible when needed. And although there's a fair old workload to get the spreadsheet information that you've got at the moment from your paper system or your spreadsheet system into Parish Online, once it's there, the actual upkeep is much faster and much more accurate. And we're going to show you why this afternoon. So in Parish Online, those of you who had a chance to play with it, there are three main types of layers of information that go on top of the digital mapping. And without question, the most numerous are the third-party layers provided by people like your local district council, your county council, your unitary, but also all the third parties such as other government departments, DEFRA, the Environment Agency, and places like Historic England, the National Allotment Association, and all sorts of weird people whose things that you're beginning to see show up. And you may have noticed in your emails today a mention about the EPC function that's just arrived. Again, the data produced by a third party, in fact, another part of government, but really, really useful. So those are the main layers in the system. Then, because we recognize that those don't provide all the information you need, you get the chance to create your own parish layers, which you can make exactly the way that you want them. So you control the structure, you control the geometry, you control the styling, you control the data that goes in. So parish layers are entirely your own. Third party are read-only only, and the asset register is somewhere between the two. So you have no control over the structure, the style, and the geometry. That comes for you all built in. What you do have control over is the data going into the system, and you can obviously control getting it back out again. So one of the reasons for the asset register is that we try and keep it conformist across the whole country. So everybody in Parish Online has exactly the same system, which is great in terms of coordination and getting things sort of symmetrical, if you will, but not so clever if you've got individual weirdos that you've got to cope with in your own parish. So if you do have things that the asset register doesn't cover, and we'll show you shortly what it does cover, then you create a complementary layer in the parish layer. And the sorts of things that you find are that, for instance, a classic example at the moment is streetlights that people are beginning to find that they need to record whether they are LED lights or the old sodium lights or anything other type of lights, and ditto for the lampposts themselves. You know, are they made of steel? Are they made of fiber? Are they made of wood? Whatever it happens to be. That sort of information is not currently covered in the asset register, so you would need to create a complementary layer in the parish layer. And then when you're looking at things like streetlights, lampposts and things, you just turn on both layers together. So what is this most frequently asked question? And I always put this in here because otherwise somebody on the show is going to ask the question is, can I import the data that I have at the moment into Parish Online? And I regret that the answer is no. And the reason for that is your spreadsheet probably doesn't have geographical information on it that the system can use. So you may well say that this particular street light is on the corner of North Street and West Street, but that's of no help to Parish Online who want it in sort of a digital easting northing format or something like that. So it would take so much work for you to get the data into the format that is correct for importing. It's usually just faster to go ahead and bite the bullet and get the data in. And the beauty of the system is you don't have to do it all at once. You can do this piecemeal whenever you've got a spare moment, or even better, if you can offload this onto a really bright 6-year-old daughter or son, then this is the way to go. So children love going through a spreadsheet and putting it into a computer. You'd be astonished how much they love it. And you can tell them if they don't love it that I say that they do. But I would suggest that if you can in any way persuade someone else to do the data shifting for you, it can save you the headaches that you've only got. You're normally overworked anyway, so having an extra load of putting data from one spreadsheet into Parish Online is something that if you can get someone else to do it, I suggest you do. Okay, so it comes built into the system. It's got all the data columns that are considered needed, and they are the same for every layer in the asset register. So the asset register is a collection of layers. If you look on the left-hand side there, I've opened up the collection called asset register, so you can see the underlying layers underneath. And each one of those has a whole bunch of categories that we'll be discussing in a minute. But the data is exactly the same for every one of those layers, with one exception, of course. There's always one, which we'll cover in a second. But that means that if you want to store information that isn't in the columns, as we say, you have to create a complementary layer. However, this is not written in stone, so to speak. If enough people say that they need a change, and as a result, they are working on the street lamps that I was talking about, then they will make the changes. Nothing is sort of absolutely fixed forever. And I'm just sort of using this to mention to you the community forum, which we'll touch on later. But it's a great place to say, I find I need this, and this in the asset register. What can we do about getting it in there? Does anyone else agree with me? And by the time we've got 50 people all saying the same thing, then the people at Parish Online will pay attention. So there's a bit of planning needed for determining where your data is going to go in the system, and we're going to show you why. So I'm going to say you're clicking on the buildings layer at the top here, and my slide will assume that we've done just that. So you'll notice that the first thing is that there's a big red category box, red meaning that you must fill in this. This is slightly different from every other category box you've seen in that it's got a drop-down list. And the drop-down list varies according to which layer that you're in. So there's a whole drop-down list of buildings, which will describe things like village halls and whatever else that people have in the way of buildings. But when you get to building contents, the list changes. Now, this is the universal difference that I mentioned. The unique thing in buildings, it doesn't appear anywhere else in the asset register, is the universal property reference number. And we'll show you when I do the live demonstration where this UPRN comes from. But basically, in this country, every single building has been given a unique number by the Ordnance Survey, and that number is used by everybody. So your insurance company is going to use the same number no matter where you are for which building you're in, because it's the only unique number that's allocated across the country. So UPRN is very useful to have. Fortunately, they're given to you within Parish Online, and we'll just go through that in a second. And the reason that we're doing this exercise, you will recall, is to see what layers they are and what categories they are, so that you can assign the rows in your spreadsheet of assets before you punch them into a Parish Online. And the other fields that you see here, the columns, are all the standard things that your insurance company is going to inspect. What do you own? How much is it worth? How much is it going to cost to replace? That sort of thing. Replacement value is crucial because it's become the custom nowadays for people like the fire brigades and the emergency services. Unless human life is at risk, they will not enter burning buildings. They'll just let them burn. So if your village hall catches fire and there's nobody inside, the fire brigade will just make a cup of tea and watch it burn, and you will have to replace the whole thing. So replacement value is a key requirement from insurance companies. They need you to tell them what it's going to cost to replace your village hall because you won't have to repair it. You'll have to completely rebuild it. Moving on, I'm clicking on category now, and you get this drop down list of the various buildings that tend to be required as assets. You'll notice that this is a scrollable list, so there is a slider here. You can go way down below here to see what other things there are. And it's not quite the last one, but as you'd expect, Village Hall is there down at the bottom. So when you've entered something and you remember in Parish Online that in this feature editor, when you've put in one entry and you've clicked on save, it then gives you a nice blank record and says move on to the next. And because they're very helpful people, they've given you the choice of changing the layer. So if you've done all your building entries and you want to move on to the next one, you can click on here and move on to the next one. But there's a slight catch. What you get is a list of all the layers available within Parish Online. And if you've got lots of them as parish layers, then you're going to have to work your way through it to get there. Now, again, we'll do this in the live demonstration, but let me just mention it to you now. The fastest way of getting to the place you want to go is to type the first 3 or 4 letters of the word that you're looking for in here. So it'll just jump straight to the one. It does what's called list reduction. So, it takes a list of maybe 50 names. And by the time you type 3 letters, you should be down to about 2 or 3, and you can just select the one you want. So that's why we're going to suggest in a second that you print out the list of all the layers and the list of all the categories before you start this exercise, because it saves you a lot of time and trouble. All right, so we've moved into a building contents layer. This slide just shows you that, again, the list of categories has changed accordingly. Now, the knowledge base on the asset register is actually very well written, and there's a very nice little video that you can look. For those who need a reminder, the knowledge base is attainable through the cogwheel in the top right-hand corner of Parish Online, and it's the second drop-down list that shows up. However, you can jump straight to the knowledge base without going through Parish Online at all. So I've given you here a clickable link. When you get the presentation, you can just go here. And I would suggest you bookmark the URL because you're likely to be going here quite often. And I think you'll particularly be going here during your time of entry into the asset register. So thoughts in advance of working with it. If you've got a spreadsheet with all your assets in it at the moment, try adding a couple of columns to it, one for the layer and one for the category. And then go to the knowledge base article I was mentioning here, type in asset register, and it comes up with a list of all the layers and all of the categories. And if you've got your spreadsheet with that information in advance, then you can sort it in order of layers, and you'll find that it's so much faster to enter data into the asset register if everything in the same layer just follows one on from the other. You're not jumping from layer to layer to layer. You go into the building layer, you've got 2 entries, you go into the building contents layer, you've got 5 entries, and so it goes all the way through. Much easier for you. I just mentioned is a hint that's got nothing to do with planning your entry. So these things are all to do with planning your entry. The second thing is that each record can have any number of attachments, documents, photographs, reports, whatever. And this is where you build up the due diligence of a track record of everything. So when your maintenance people produce you an invoice to say that they've done work, when they've mowed the grass, when they've inspected the park benches, when they've painted whatever it is they're meant to be painting, keep all that, attach it to the record to which it's appropriate. And that really helps when the time comes to make an insurance claim or to defend yourself against the claim being made against you. And I have put all this emphasis on insurance because there are some horror stories. Now, I know that the insurance companies will always use fear as a means of getting you to do business with them, but it is historically correct that there was a bus driver driving his coach through one of the parishes, and a tree fell on top of his bus, and he was damaged for life. He was critically injured. And it was shown that the council was responsible for the tree that fell, and they hadn't been doing the inspections that they were supposed to have been doing. And so when it fell, it was deemed an avoidable accident, and therefore it was their fault. And it cost them £500,000. So I just mentioned that in passing, because there is a reason for all of this, and it's a very good, expensive reason. I'm going to show you during the presentation how you can use these screenshots to track changes. So the last valuation and inspection dates show the last time that it happened, but they don't come up with a list of the last time it happened. So what I'm suggesting is that just before you make a change to one of those fields, take a screenshot of your entry and then store that in the record. And then you've got a track record of every time that you made a change to the valuation date and the inspection date. And again, that's just part of the proof of your organization being in good shape and with good governance due diligence. And we will show you how to really speed up the date changes. You know, when you're going into the system and it says, when did you buy the asset? And you say, 1st of October, 1992 or something, getting back to 1992 can be very tedious, but there is a way of speeding it up. So I'm going to go into a live demonstration, and I'm going to show you these things, but we'll switch the screens now to Parish Online, assuming I've got it right, and we'll see if we can just show you what we're talking about. And we've got Parish Online up here. I can't see it. They always do this. Let's try another one. There we go. So in your asset register here, click to space all the layers, go into a layer. For the demonstration, we're going to just go into buildings, and to open up a feature, we just right click anywhere in the layer. So up pops a mini menu and we click on add a feature. Hopefully everyone's familiar with this. Now I'm going to select the village hall as the category, just because we've definitely got one. And although we've already got an entry for it, a second entry is not going to do any harm. So we have a village hall. Now I promised to show you the UPRN. So the UPRN is stored for you in the address space. So if you close the asset register, come down to addresses, turn on the address space, and you've got a dot for every building that exists and is known about. So when you have got your particular building, you can type in the address up here and it'll just pop up, or you can just sort of leap in and find it. And I'm just going to say this is our village hall. And it tells you, sorry, when I find the right one, the village hall itself, it'll tell you what the UPRN number is. Now this is a digit up to, sorry, a digital number up to 12 numbers long, can be less, but it won't be more than 12. And now you can just copy and paste this into the record that we were creating before. But you find the UPRN in the address space. So we'll turn that off for clarity. We'll go back to our, well, I'll turn you off, go back to our asset register. You notice my deliberate mistake. I started creating the feature before I had the EPRN, but never mind. So we'll just go back to creating our village hall. And we put in the UPRN, which you'll notice was that. And it's, I'm just going to put in test hall for today's purposes. And then you can fit in all the rest, but it doesn't have to be done now. You'll notice that the save button is still grayed out because we haven't actually said where the village hall is. So we're going to zoom into a nice empty space and we're going to build a nice new empty village hall, which is right there. Now we can save. Now, I did promise to show you how you can shorten the time taken to get another layer. So if I say I now want to put in the second record, but in a completely different layer, I click on there and you'll see all of my parish layers show up long before I even get down to the asset register. The asset register hasn't even started yet. So if you know where you're going to go, you can just type in the first few letters up here. So if I type in playground, let's try a bit better, P-L, oh, I see. There we go. And it jumps straight to playground equipment for you. So I only typed in 4 letters because play is 4 as opposed to plan, which is also 4. So you needed the Y to break it down. But now it's just a piece of cake to roll on and create your new record. So I also promised to show you fast date selection. So you can click on here to get your date. And when this pops up, the instinctive reaction is to say, I want to go back to the 1st of October, 1992, and going back here through 30 years, a month at a time, is very tedious. What you want to do is click on the year, right? The whole thing now changes to years. It's a piece of cake to zoom back to 1992. And then I said it was October and the 1st. So that really is only taking just a few seconds to get the date in there. So I promised then to show you how you could take a screenshot to record the dates here. So let's say we've got the last evaluation date of 2 months ago. And now I'm going to make a change because our evaluation frequency is every 2 months, let's say. So the thing to do is now just take a screenshot. Now, depending on whether you're using a Mac or a Linux machine or a Windows machine, how you take a screenshot is slightly different, but it's very quick. It's very simple. It'll always deposit it in the same place, which is usually somewhere like your desktop. And then you can just pick it up and attach it to a record. I should mention that you can't attach things to a record whilst you're creating it here in the feature editor. You have to go back to the start, and we'll say we don't care about this one. We'll shut down the feature editor. So what I'm going to do is say I want to attach that date change to the village hall. So here is the village hall, and now you see that the attachment box has shown up. I can click on here, I can attach something, and it'll let me attach anything I like. And we'll just say we're going to attach a meter reading, why not? And that over a few seconds or two will arrive here. Because it's a photograph, it's going to take a little time to attach itself, but it will. What I mentioned in the presentation is you want to choose your name carefully when you're adding attachments, because if you start doing this on a regular basis, you're going to end up with lots and lots and lots of attachments. And the question is, how do you identify them in the future? And although it goes against many people's grains, I suggest that you start with the date and that you name it something weird like year, month, day, which would appeal to any Americans amongst us by any chance. But you'll see that this has now just popped up. It took a while because it's a photograph. But what you see is meter2.jpg. But when you've got 20 or 30 of these, you have no idea which date this refers to or whatever. So what I suggest is that before you add it in here, you put on, use a name structure that will be advantageous to you later. And so I would suggest you put in today's date would be in ISO fashion would be 220324, and then you can say meter reading, and then that makes sense because when you've got 50 of them, you can just jump to the one that you want. So I hope that's straightforward. And that's covered the items that I was saying I was going to cover in the presentation. So if we leap back to here, I've done all of these now, and we'll move on to the next bit. So once you've got your asset register inside the system, then there's bound to be a time when you need to edit it. And one of the fastest and easiest ways to edit multiple records is to use the table view, because it lists for you all the records in that particular layer. So I'm just assuming that we've gone to a table view. This is what a table view looks like. And you can see that I've got several items here. In fact, there's only 4, but this could be 50 or 100 or whatever it happens to be. But you can edit the entries in here just by clicking on them. So if you're going to say this was last year's value for the replacement, but this year it's gone up, you can just click here and type over with the new number, which is now £25,000 or whatever it happens to be. And then having made the change, you just click anywhere else to save it. And you can do that to any of these fields, but you can also scroll down and do it. Oops, sorry, I've forgotten that was in a presentation. You can scroll down and get to any of the other records. So if you're changing more than one record at a time, table view is the place to do it. If you want to create a report of everything that you own, then the classic time to do this is when you're renewing your insurance policy and they say, so what is it that we're going to be insuring? You can go to a new report, which is in the Tools menu now. So if you go to Tools, Asset Register Export, you'll come up with something like this. We've gone up to here, we've gone to Tools, we've gone to Asset Register Export, and it's come up and said, okay, what do you want to generate? Now, at the moment, we can only generate a PDF. We have asked for a CSV format so that it will come out like a spreadsheet, and you can do a lot more with that. And I'm mentioning here, we've also talked about Community Forum once already today. Here's my second plug for it. And when we get into the tail end, the question and answer session, I usually go and show you what the Community Forum looks like and why you'd want to be there. So here you've got the chance of selecting which layers you want to go into the report. Now, by default, the system selects all the layers within the asset register, which is usually what you're going to want in your report. But if you're saying just report to me on the following 3 layers, you can go in here and just select the 3 you want. Actually, you have to deselect the others, but there are only going to be 15 altogether. So if you want to report on 3 of them, you just got to untick 12 of them. You get the choice of adding maps, which puts a map in to show the insurance company, a different map for each layer with each of the items listed on the map. Really, really handy. And you can say, yes, I want to include those items where there is space for something, but we haven't got one yet. I don't know of an occasion when you would need that, but somebody obviously does because they gave you the option to say, yes, include 0 rows. By default, it's off. And by default, the maps are off. And one of the reasons for that is that creating lots and lots of maps takes a long time. And when you click on the Generate Report button, you may feel that nothing's happening. And it will actually come up with one of those little spiraling circles that goes round and round and round. But if it seems to be going on forever, remember that this is a big report and it's going to take a while. And you can't click on open to have a look at the report until it's finished generating. So your clue is whether this is still grayed out or not. When it becomes solid, then you know the report is finished and you can click on it, which sums up with this. And you can see I've got a 95-page report here. So this is not trivial. There is an error in the system at the moment. We discovered yesterday when running this report that everybody had 250 defibrillators, which was nice for the value of their assets, but not very accurate. And it turns out that there's a bug in the system which they're tracking down and getting rid of. But if you run the report today, I don't know if they fixed it yet, but if you run the report today and you come up with 250 defibrillators, now you know why, but they are working on it.
They haven't repaired it, it's still on there.
Still yeah, somebody speaks from recent experience. Okay. The other way to get data out is to go into any item anywhere in the asset register. It doesn't matter which one you go to. And you're going to click on these three dots, which will generate this little drop-down menu. Click on Data Extract, and that produces this next table like this, where they say, what layer do you want to extract from? And then this gives you the chance to extract whatever data you want. So once you've got it, you can also select a filter if you want to narrow things down, drill down, or whatever the modern terminology is. And then you click Run down the bottom. And what you'll get is a report. Well, okay, I obviously didn't bother with it, but you get a report that lists everything that you want from that particular layer. Well, having run it, you get the chance to export the data to a spreadsheet if you want to, which is really, really helpful. The only problem is you've got to do it layer by layer to get your entire spreadsheet at the moment. But we have asked them to produce the report so that you can not only select a PDF, but you can also select a CSV file. Okay, this is where the fun starts. So let me just ask if anybody has any questions in the meantime, or shall we get on and play around and carry on? So silence from everybody.
No, I have a question.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, when you're in creating reports, you said 0 rows. In this context, does 0 actually mean 0, or does 0 mean null?
No, 0 means rows that have got no value in them.
So it's null, not 0.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So so it isn't a figure 0. It's rows which don't have anything in them.
You know, it's a good question because I never tried it. I will give it a try.
Because 0 and null are mathematically very different.
Well, yes, that's true. And I don't know which one it means. I haven't even.
Okay, so another question for you.
Okay.
Okay. When you're talking about adding items to the asset register, you say when you update things, when you change them, take a screen print of evidence of the date that you changed it. That sounds to me like an almighty kludge, because you started off by saying we need to get rid of the paper and get everything electronic. And I therefore say, should we be lobbying for the system to automatically record the date on which the last change of a value was made?
I think that would be a great idea. I've never had to defend against a claim. I'm only assuming from something that somebody once told me that they were surprised it didn't record the interactive dates as they changed, or sorry, the last evaluation dates or whatever,
yeah,
the last inspection date. And so I came up with this as a solution to that. But you're right, it would be far better for the system to do the work for you. And yes, I absolutely applaud the idea of either opening a ticket or opening a topic in the community forum. Third time I've mentioned it, we actually will get there.
Okay. And the third point,
right?
You're talking about streetlights and adding data. We've just recently had all our streetlights in our village updated, and all the LEDs, all the luminaires replaced with LEDs. And as part of the contract, we asked the contractor to provide geodata. So we've now got a spreadsheet which contains the geolocation data of every column, together with the test certificate, the type of luminaire, etc. So that was produced using software called Fulcrum. So we can now import the Fulcrum layer into Parish Online, and it contains all 159 streetlight and the full data, the last test record, and all the technical details about the lights, etc. So that if other people are upgrading their street lights, it's worth asking that as part of your contract.
That's a great thing. Well, sound advice. Thank you very much. I like that. Have you had that spreadsheet imported yet into Parish Online?
No, I can't do it. Chris Muse is going to do it for me.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, as long as it's all in hand, that's great. That's a wonderful idea. Thank you for the thought. Okay, any other questions? Nope. All right, let's move on to the play bit. This is all about geolocation, and the idea of geolocation is enabling you to go and look at your assets, take a photograph of the assets, and have that photograph show up in Parish Online. And to do that, you're using the GPS on your phone to help identify where you are so that it knows where you're standing and it can find that record in the parish online, or rather it help you to find the right record for that particular place. The big fact is we need to have the asset itself in parish online before you start, because it won't add it. It hasn't got anything to add your photograph to if the record doesn't already exist. Now, I was asked yesterday if you can use your phone to create the record whilst you're out in the field. And the answer is yes. If you're skilled with your fingers and you can read tiny writing, then that's it. My recommendation is that you add everything back at home where you've got a nice big screen and a nice keyboard. But it certainly is possible to create records whilst you're out there. So for today's exercise, this is where you start doing the work now. And you can do this on your desktop computer. So you don't use your phones yet. What we need to do is to create an object in the asset register that you're going to imagine is somewhere out in the field, but in actual fact, it's right next to you. It can be your desk itself, it can be a shredder machine, it can be a computer, it can be your flower pot. I don't mind what it is. We're just going to delete this entry on the completion of today's exercise. But for today's exercise, you do need to go into the asset register. I suggest you create a new object in the building contents field. That's where you'd expect to see a desk under furniture or something like that, or a shredder or whatever. And then we'll turn on geolocation and we'll play with the phone. So I'm moving to the next screen to show you what it is that you're going to have to do. So I'm hoping that people are now reading this and doing it, but basically you're going to your asset register, you're selecting the building contents layer, you're right-clicking to produce the add feature, and you're going to add something in the business, in the appropriate category, and probably business equipment is as good as any, or maybe furniture. When you give it a name to identify it, put the word test in so that you can find it easily later to delete it. And then you need to actually click on the geography. When you're putting this new feature on the map, put it where you are. So if you're in your home, then put it in your home position. If you're in your office, put it in your office position. Because when we do the exercise with the smartphone, we're going to go out and photograph and add the feature, and you need to be standing by the feature to find it. So once you've got it located and in place and you've got a big black save button, then please click on the save button and close the feature editor. And then step 2, when everyone's ready, we'll move on to the smartphone or your portable device. Doesn't have to be a phone. So I'll give people a few seconds whilst I drink coffee. If anybody isn't ready, shout, otherwise I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we're now going to set your phone or your portable device up for GPS. And the first thing we need to do is to turn off the Wi-Fi. Now, it doesn't matter for today's exercise if you leave the Wi-Fi on, because I'm sure you're very close to your router, near enough, it doesn't make any difference. But as you're wandering around outside, you don't want to have your Wi-Fi think that you're tied into the local nearest mast or Wi-Fi hotspot. You need the system to find your actual phone via GPS. And the way to do that is to turn the Wi-Fi off and have the cell phone system find you by GPS. So you don't need to do it today, but in the future, you will do. Those of you who've done this in advance, well done. But if you'd now go to Parish Online in your browser, for those who haven't got there yet, it's parishonline.xmap.cloud. You'll be asked to sign in the usual way with your login and your password, which I hope everybody remembers. and I'm making the assumption that you're there. Somebody shout if they're not. And we're now going to turn on geolocation. Now, depending on what sort of phone you've got, the 3 vertical dots that represent the menu are going to be on the bottom row, but they might be on the left or on the right. Assuming that they're there, just tap them and up will come the option for geolocation, and tap it to turn it on, and a blue dot will appear on your screen that indicates where you are. And the browser will now ask you, can Parish Online use your location? Please click allow so that it will track you. And then the last thing to do, which again is not necessary today, but is going to be useful for the future, is there's a crosshair icon in the middle of your screen. If you tap it, it'll change color and fill in a little bit. And the map will now follow the blue dot that represents you. So since you aren't moving anywhere today, it's going to be irrelevant. But once you're out in the field, it's nice to have the map change as you walk along, so that when you stand in front of the park bench or the statue or the war memorial, whatever it is you're going to photograph, it actually does have you there. So next step is to find the record that you have created. So you're going to blow up the map, really. And it's probably already, you're probably already on your house. So you just need to turn off the follow button if you like, so that the geolocation, just so the blue dot doesn't get in the way of your feature. Otherwise, it can sometimes prevent you from clicking on the feature. And you'll find that there's a menu button, which I say here is 3 vertical dots, but it isn't actually, I lie. It's the little square in the bottom left corner that looks something like either a layered diamond, if you think of it that way, or those of you who remember Licorice All Sorts, it's one of those black and white squares of the Licorice All Sorts that were arguably one of the better bits. If you click on that, it will bring up the menu button, and you can then choose your asset register and choose whichever layer it was you selected, which is probably building contents. And then the icon that you've just added should pop up, and you can see it, and just click on it to open up the data record from it. Now, we had issues yesterday where a few people would tap the icon and apparently nothing would happen. And it turns out that this depends on what sort of phone you got, which operating system, which version of the operating system. So it varies for everybody. But if that happens to you, the solution is to go back and touch the menu, the Licorice All Sort again, and up will pop the the layers button, and that will open up the record for you. So you should now have the record open on your phone. Scroll down to attachments and click on plus, and then it'll ask you, what do you want to add? And you can take a photo and add it to the record. Or if you've already got a photo of anything, it doesn't have to be your desk, it doesn't have to be the waste paper basket. I was just doing that for show. You can put in a photo of your best friend, if you like. Just add it to the record, and then save it. And then for fun, we'll come back to our desktop version of Parish Online. And it'd be fun to take a look at your feature and see if the photo that you've attached has arrived. And if it hasn't, then you can shoot me. So the silence in the world suggests either that everyone is desperately unhappy or they're all delighted.
I have a question.
Yep.
A question. The geolocation data that's showing is actually, I can see the geolocation dot, which indicates where it thinks I am, but it's not where I am. Is there any way of introducing? Is there any way of introducing a correction factor?
Yes, and yes. So I should mention to you that there is a wonderful little video on geolocation in the knowledge base. Just go into the knowledge base and type on geolocation, and you'll get a little video from Chris. It's not very long. I think it's less than 4 minutes. and it's fascinating because you actually see him doing it, covering all these steps. And he says very clearly that there's a time feature involved. It takes a while for the GPS to sort itself out. And it's usually several minutes. So I don't know if you ever use Google Maps when you're wandering around a new town or something, but when the system starts, you aren't always where the blue dot is. But by the time you've been walking for about 5 minutes, you'll find it's caught up with you.
No, I understand. I understand that fully. I trained and qualified as a navigator.
Oh, okay.
So I understand how all that works. But you know, it's been there for about 5 minutes now, and it should have caught up.
I'm not aware of anything. No. I don't. Is this on your phone that you're talking?
No, the geolocation on my laptop.
Right. Let's ask Geosphere, because I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll open it.
I don't know.
I don't know of a way of putting in a correction. No. When I was doing my navigation, we had the very latest in digital work in those days was called Decca, and Decca was famous for lane changing.
I know Decca well.
And Decca would say that you were here, and in that point of fact, you knew damn well that you weren't there. So you viewed it with a lot of caution in those days. Much more accurate nowadays, unless you're James Bond, in which case Spectre or the Russians are very keen on making sure that you aren't where you think you are. So just to catch up with where we are, we've talked about why there's an asset register. We've talked about how it's structured.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I've tried to do this on my phone, the asset register, add an asset to it. But when I'm typing, so I've got it up there, but when I try to type in, you know, a description or something, I don't know whether it's my phone, but it's basically, if I hit it, the keypad doesn't come up. It comes up and then goes away. So I can't actually...
I've got that exactly the same on mine.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you will recall that I said at the start of this that I really don't recommend that people add records into the parish online through their phone unless it's a matter of last resort, because it really isn't as straightforward and easy as it is on your desktop. And certainly I'm all fingers and thumbs on my phone. So if I had what you're reporting, I would just say that's my fault and go away. But if you've got an error that is obviously repeatable because two of you have got it, then let's get on to, we go into the question and answer session. We can go into the ticketing system and open up a ticket and see what Geosphere has to say.
So if I've got to create one on my computer, an asset, and
yes,
then update it from the phone, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yes. Much quicker, much simpler to do it on your keyboard device first, and then come back to the phone later to actually call out the record to add the photo to it.
Okay.
Okay, Graham, that makes sense. I knew that, but I kind of thought, because I'm not in the parish where that little blue map is, I'm about 10 miles north of there. So I've got to use my phone to do this. And
no. Well, you can always, that's why I said put the new feature wherever you happen to be. It doesn't matter whether it's in your parish or not. Just for today's exercise, we're done. Okay. Now, depending on what you've added, you may feel that you want to delete that record now. If it's something serious, if you're in your office and you put your office on the asset register, that's fine. But if what you've done doesn't belong in your asset register, then I would just suggest you go ahead and delete it. So I've got to the end of the formal presentation. We're moving on to the Q&A session. In a second, I'll kill my screen sharing and come back to you. Just want to point out the usual stuff, right? If any of you have ideas on new sessions that you want in the training system, please let me know, because I'm always keen to come up with new stuff. I've concentrated several times today on the knowledge base, and when we get out of the question and answer session, I'll show you why I'm so keen on it. But I do want to just emphasize, use the knowledge base. It's getting very, very much better. Geosphere Parish Online people have recently updated the knowledge base. They've completely changed the system that they're using, and they're rewriting all the stuff. A lot of it is very new, and the quality of the rewrite is brilliant. They're doing some great stuff at the moment. So I do recommend you go there. And finally, I've now finally got myself sufficiently organized to put up a timetable of what lessons are coming when on my website. And so I just give you a link here, which you can see when you get the copy of the presentation. So now I'm going to kill the screen sharing and come back to everybody and see if we have anybody who's got any questions, any issues, any problems.
Yeah, so you'll be sending that, what you've sent out and the recording. So
Yes.
if I've missed now how to do it, I can do it from your instructions.
Absolutely. That's usually the way that I say in advance. We're going to go through this so quickly that it's when you get the recording afterwards, you can go through it in your own time and catch up on the bits you've missed. So absolutely, yes. That's
Thank you.
the way I work. So no problem.
Thank you.
Anyone else got an issue that I can help with? It doesn't have to be on this topic particularly. We can talk about something else.
Just one. We've got Parish Online, obviously, and I've tended to use layers, bespoke layers, rather than the ones that were there, you know, like your asset register. Is there any problem with doing it that way? Do you see, you know, doing your own bespoke layers rather than using, you know, the list that is down on the left-hand side on yours?
Are you talking about the asset register, or are you talking about generally?
Generally, because
No. I think all people all the time are creating their own layers within Parish Online, in the parish layers. And in point of fact, that is the only place that you can produce your own layers.
yeah.
So if you're saying you should create your own layers rather than say, I don't know, the flood map that the Environment Agency creates, then I would have thought that was a lot of duplicate work that you didn't need to do. But in terms of, you're saying you're using some bespoke layers?
Just bespoke layers for, like I've done a bespoke one for grass cutting. I've done one for play equipment. So those sort of layers I've done.
Right.
Rather than use your prescribed ones. Yeah.
Yes, I understand that. And then if you recall back at the beginning of the presentation, I was saying that lots of people complement the asset register with their own layers in the parish layer because it gives better understanding, better play. So certainly I have a layer called Playground Features, which I turn on at the same time as the asset register layer called Playground, and they complement each other because we get more details in there, the stuff that mothers want to know or whatever it happens to be. So yes, you know, the asset register makes no record on the playground equipment of whether it's suitable for children less than 3 years old or something, but
yeah, so it's not a problem using the...
Not at all. No, this is a free-for-all, use your own intelligence, create your own system. Good.
Thank you.
Tracy Dixon, were you looking to ask something, or are you just adjusting your camera?
Yeah, no, I've got it on my phone. It's not a problem. But even if I tap the geolocation, I don't come up. Is that because I don't live in my parish?
Well, the answer to your question is your geolocation should come up with where you are at the moment.
There's nothing. I'm not getting a dot or anything showing with my geolocation at all on either of the two phones.
Okay, did you, so there are a couple of steps to getting the geolocation to show up. The first one is to click on the 3 dots.
Yep.
And it says geolocation.
Yep.
Has that got a big tick mark opposite the geolocation? It
has, yes.
And then did it ask you to allow you to follow your location?
No, it doesn't do anything.
Okay, I think that may be the issue. The browser should have said, will you allow Parish Online to follow your location? And the answer to that was allow.
Yeah, it's not coming up. I can turn the tick on and off.
Right.
But the question.
Okay, let's go through this separately afterwards, if you like, and
Yep,
we
okay.
see if we can fix that. But there's a difference between what should happen and what did happen.
Yeah.
So clearly we need to fix what did happen. Or what, yes, Bob, go ahead.
Just a quickie, Graham. And so it's a very slight correction. UPRN is a unique property reference number, not universal property reference number.
Did I say universal? I beg your pardon. No,
Yes.
you're right. It is unique.
It's actually unique, yeah.
Yes. Did I even write universal on the slide?
Yes.
No, dear. Okay, I'll fix that before I send it out. Thank you. Any other questions? Martin, you look as if you might be ready to ask a question. No?
Oh, fine.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I've got, no, the information's been really helpful, and it happened first time, so no, it's great.
Brilliant. Well, I'm very pleased. Well, I did mention to disbelieving people the other day when I was talking about sharing the workload, going out and taking a photograph of every asset that you have is very time consuming unless you do what we do, which is to go and nobble the headmaster of the local primary school and say, why don't you send the kids out with their phones and ask them to do a competition? How many bus shelters can you find? How many grit bins? How many dog poo bins? And they all came back. It was fascinating. They loved doing it because they could get Parish Online on their phones, and they were therefore really, they had something neat to play with. B, you'd be astonished at what a 4-year-old thinks a bus shelter is. It really came up with quite a lot of creative ideas. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of helpful, and the kids have to go outside and do walks or whatever it is they do every day. They might just as well help you out. You now see crocodiles of children going around our village, all chattering away to themselves, 19 to the dozen, and they want to know whether you need a copy of every earthworm they pass, because that's surely a village asset, you know. So it's great. So I'm just all for.
Graham, so just on that. On that, sorry, Graham, it's so that all they're doing is just supplying you with the photographs rather than actually uploading them onto their. You're not asking them to put them onto your maps, are you? Or you are asking them?
Actually, we did. We invited them to put them on directly into Parish Online. We gave them all the same account. So you give everyone an account call it School Kids or something. They've all got the same account name. They've all got the same password. They can all log in at the same time, and they can all add things at the same time. And then what was a burden for you actually becomes fun, because you need to go through and delete the ones that you don't want. But it's so much fun to see how many bus shelters look like the pumping house, you know, whatever it happens to be. So it is possible to give an account to everybody. It needs to be an account that's very temporary. You know, once the kids have done it, you then delete it so that you haven't left an account open. But for what you want to do is to give them an account that's got editor rights, so they can edit a field that a record that already exists, but they can't create stuff of their own. So give them an account with editor rights, and everything is pretty safe, and it's certainly very entertaining. Right, I promised to tell everybody a little bit more about the knowledge base or the community forum. So let me just go over to sharing my screen again. And let me go up to the community forum, which is here. So this is the address that I gave you, this one up here. And you can see that the knowledge base is here. So if you want to know about geolocation, you just, well, if you can type, you'd be better off than I am. Hearing me, there you go. And then it tells you how to use it. And you get up this little video with Chris, which is, I think it's great. It's a sweet little video. It tells you everything I've just been telling you, but you can actually see it. But the community forum is a new device they brought in, and here you can add a topic about anything. So it'll ask you to log in the first time with your email address and a password. After that, it recognizes you, And you can scroll through and see what people have done already. And the one that I wanted you to join in was to help out with the, not the speed limits, this one, the asset register export. So the knowledge base entry for asset register export states that future exports, IEG, EG, and CSV format may be created based upon demand. So I've registered my request for this as the first person. And we've had one other guy who's come in and said, absolutely, we need this. But I would like it if all you guys could say, yes, please, we'd like this too, just so it moves up the priority list in Parish Online's heads. So this is the point of the community forum, is that when you have a problem, just come on in here, add the problem, and anybody who's online at the time can pitch in and help you out. And certainly there are a couple of people on here, this one with the geometry of allotments, where we got 3 or 4 answers within a couple of hours of each other, and gave the person who raised the question several solutions to her problem. And so you can do that as well. Just come into this page, go into the community forum and add a topic. So I think I'm done. Wide open to any questions if anybody has them, or we can say thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing anyway. Do please come along to the Friday afternoon banter sessions if you have a question. The way this works is there's a group of volunteers who are themselves parish clerks or councillors, but they're all very familiar with Parish Online, and they're just dying to help you out. So it's a very friendly, cheerful bunch. They're very good at answering questions from people. The questions very soon get off the subject of Parish Online because they're all parish clerks or councillors. They all want to chat about unitaries or the latest government legislation or something, which is why it's called a banter session. But they are there specifically to help people who have a question, or they have an issue, or they have something that's holding them up, and they will answer you right there and then. There's a lot of expertise there. So whatever question you've got, no matter how simple it seems, there'll be someone there who can answer it. And we all recognize that when you get started with Parish Online, it seems to be a really tricky thing. But actually, once you're into it, if you get the chance to use it on a reasonably regular basis, you'll find it's a huge time saver and a great aid to your work. But there is this business of getting over the initial learning hurdle, which is why the banter session is there to speed things up for you. So you can come in on any Friday, somewhere between 3 and 4 o'clock. Just log in, join in the session, ask a question, and drop out again. No one minds you leaving because we all recognize that you're busy, but there are some who stay on because they're too fascinated for words. So I just mentioned that.
Sorry,
yes.
How do we get into that? Sorry.
When I send you the email after this session, it has a document which gives all these addresses for you. But in point of fact, there's a really complicated website called Parish Online User Group, all one word, .com. And then it's the first choice in there. So parishonlineusergroup.com. Okay. So thank you everybody for your time. Really good to see you, and look forward to seeing you next time, possibly in a banter session. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.